The afternoon sun filtered through the lace curtains of Margaret Thompson's living room in suburban Indianapolis, casting delicate shadows across the hardwood floor she'd polished that morning. At 62, Margaret had developed a routine that kept the three-story house immaculate, the same house she'd called home for the past 35 years, where she'd raised her son David and created countless memories with her late husband, Robert. She was folding the last of the laundry when she heard the front door slam with unnecessary force. Jennifer, her daughter-in-law, stormed into the kitchen, her heels clicking aggressively against the tile floor. Margaret glanced at the clock. 3:47 p.m. Jennifer was home early from her marketing job downtown, and judging by the sound of cabinets being yanked open, she was in one of her moods. "Margaret!" Jennifer's voice cut through the peaceful afternoon like a knife. "Margaret, get in here." Setting down the towel she'd been folding, Margaret walked calmly to the kitchen. Jennifer stood by the granite island, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the surface, her face flushed with anger. Beside her lay a stack of mail that Margaret had neatly sorted that morning. "Yes, Jennifer?" Margaret kept her voice steady, though she could feel her heart beginning to race. After 3 years of living under the same roof, she'd learned to recognize the warning signs of Jennifer's outbursts. "Did you open my credit card statement?" Jennifer held up an envelope, waving it accusingly. Margaret frowned. "No, dear. I simply sorted the mail as I always do. Your mail is in your pile, unopened." "Don't lie to me!" Jennifer's voice rose to a shriek. "The envelope is torn at the corner. You've been snooping through my things again." "Jennifer, I assure you, just like last week when you accidentally moved my work documents, and the week before when you happened to clean my home office while I was out," Jennifer's green eyes flashed with fury. "I'm sick of this, Margaret. Sick of you acting like you own this place." Margaret felt her chest tighten. Since Robert's death 2 years ago, these confrontations had become increasingly frequent. When David had suggested she move in with them after the funeral, saying it would be good for everyone, that the kids would love having Grandma around, it had seemed like a blessing. But Jennifer had grown increasingly hostile, especially after Margaret had started contributing to the household expenses. "Jennifer, this is my home too," Margaret said quietly. "I pay half the mortgage, utilities, and your money doesn't give you the right to invade my privacy." Jennifer slammed her hand on the counter. "You think because you write a few checks you can do whatever you want? Rearrange my furniture, change my children's schedules, undermine my parenting? I've never undermined. You told Emma she didn't have to eat her vegetables last night. She was feeling sick. I thought, you thought? You thought?" Jennifer's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "That's the problem, Margaret. You're always thinking, always interfering, always acting like you're the queen of this castle." Margaret straightened her shoulders. "I've lived in this house for 35 years, Jennifer. I raised my family here. I'm not some guest you can—" "That's exactly what you are." Jennifer's voice cracked like a whip. "A guest. This is my house now. David and I pay the mortgage. Our names are on the deed. You're here because we allow it, nothing more." The words stung, but Margaret had heard variations of this speech before. She took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Jennifer, we've had this conversation. After Robert died, David insisted I shouldn't be alone. We agreed that I would contribute financially to help with the larger mortgage you took on for the renovations. Renovations you suggested. Renovations that increased the home's value by 40%, Margaret countered. And I paid for half of them." Jennifer's laugh was harsh and bitter. "You think your money makes you important? You think it gives you power here?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Let me make something crystal clear, Margaret. You're nobody here. Nobody. You're just a lonely old woman clinging to the past, trying to buy relevance with your dead husband's insurance money." The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Margaret felt as if she'd been slapped. In all their arguments, Jennifer had never been quite so cruel, so deliberately hurtful. She looked at her daughter-in-law, this woman her son loved, the mother of her grandchildren, and saw nothing but contempt in her eyes. "Is that really how you see me?" Margaret's voice was barely above a whisper. "That's how everyone sees you," Jennifer spat. "The neighbors pity you. The kids tolerate you. Even David thinks you're becoming a burden, but he's too nice to say it." Margaret knew that last part was a lie. David called her every day from work, always ending with, "Love you, Mom." But the venom in Jennifer's voice, the sheer hatred, was real. "I see." Margaret nodded slowly, a strange calm settling over her. "Thank you for the clarity, Jennifer." Jennifer blinked, seemingly thrown by Margaret's composed response. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I understand my position now." Margaret turned to leave the kitchen. "If you'll excuse me, I have some phone calls to make." "Margaret," Jennifer started, but Margaret was already walking up the stairs to her suite on the second floor. Once in her room, Margaret sat on the edge of her bed and looked around. The space was lovely. David had insisted she take the entire second floor when she moved in, creating a private apartment with a bedroom, sitting area, and renovated bathroom. The walls displayed photos of Robert, David's childhood pictures, and recent snapshots of her grandchildren, Emma and Ryan. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found her financial advisor's number. Then she set it down without calling. Not yet. She needed to think. From downstairs, she heard Jennifer on the phone, probably calling David to give her version of events. Margaret could imagine the conversation. Your mother is impossible. She's trying to take over everything. I can't live like this. Margaret walked to her window and looked out at the backyard where Robert had built a swing set for David 30 years ago. David had insisted on keeping it for his own children. So many memories in this house. So much love. But Jennifer was right about one thing. The house wasn't the same home it had been. It had become a battlefield. She thought about the bills she paid each month. $2,800 for half the mortgage, $400 for utilities, $600 for groceries, $300 for the gardener and housekeeper. Nearly $4,100 a month, not counting the extras. The dance lessons for Emma she quietly funded, the math tutor for Ryan, the family vacations she subsidized. All told, she contributed almost $75,000 a year to the household while carefully maintaining her own savings. Jennifer didn't know the full extent of it. David did, of course, but Jennifer had never bothered to ask about the actual numbers. She just assumed Margaret's contributions were minimal, a token gesture from a dependent elderly woman. Margaret heard a soft knock on her door. Grandma? It was Emma, her 8-year-old granddaughter. Come in, sweetheart. Emma peeked around the door, her dark hair, so like David's at that age, falling across her face. Are you okay? I heard Mom yelling. Margaret opened her arms, and Emma ran into them. I'm fine, darling. Just a little disagreement. Mom gets really mad sometimes, Emma whispered. Daddy says she's stressed from work. Everyone gets stressed sometimes, Margaret said, smoothing Emma's hair. It's not your worry. Are you going to move away? Emma's voice was small and frightened. Mom told Dad last week that maybe you should live somewhere else. Margaret's heart clenched, but she kept her voice light. Would that make you sad? Super sad. Emma hugged her tighter. Who would make chocolate chip pancakes on Saturdays? Who would help me with my art projects? Who would tell me stories about Daddy when he was little? Oh, sweetheart. Margaret kissed the top of Emma's head. No matter what happens, I'll always be your grandma, and I'll always love you. Promise? Promise. After Emma left to do homework, Margaret sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She pulled up her banking information and studied the numbers. Between Robert's life insurance, their savings, and the investments, she had enough to live comfortably for the rest of her life. She'd been contributing to David and Jennifer's household not out of necessity, but out of love and a desire to help. But being called nobody, being told she was trying to buy relevance, that changed things. She thought about Robert, what he would say. He'd always been the practical one, the one who taught her to stand up for herself. Never let anyone make you feel small, Maggie, he used to say. You're worth more than you know. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Margaret made her decision. She wouldn't make any dramatic announcements. She wouldn't engage in another screaming match with Jennifer. She would simply quietly stop being nobody. Tomorrow, she would start making changes. But tonight, she would cook dinner for her family as always, help Ryan with his homework, and read Emma a bedtime story. She would be the grandmother and mother she'd always been. But the bills, the financial support Jennifer took for granted while calling her nobody, that was about to change. Tentar novamente, Gakaditar, Chapter 2, The Unraveling. The morning after Jennifer's outburst, Margaret woke at 5:30 a.m. as usual. But instead of heading downstairs to prepare breakfast for the family, she dressed in her walking clothes and slipped out of the house. The early October air in Indianapolis was crisp, carrying the scent of falling leaves and distant wood smoke. She walked through Meridian Hills, the neighborhood she'd known for decades, passing the Andersons Colonial where she'd attended countless summer barbecues, the park where David had learned to ride his bike. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. Mom, Jennifer said you two had an argument yesterday. Can we talk when I get home? Love you. Margaret typed back, of course. Sweetheart, have a good day at work. She didn't mention that she'd already been to the bank's website at 4 a.m., scheduling the cancellation of all automatic payments effective immediately. The mortgage payment, utilities, insurance contributions, all of it would stop hitting her account after October 31st. By the time she returned home at 7:15, the house was in its usual morning chaos. Jennifer was rushing around the kitchen in her silk blouse and pencil skirt, barking orders at the children while simultaneously checking her phone. Emma, finish your cereal. Ryan, where's your science project? I told you to put it by the door last night. Margaret quietly hung up her jacket and moved toward the stairs. Oh, you're back, Jennifer said without looking up. I was wondering who would make the kids' lunches. I'm sure you can manage, Margaret replied evenly, continuing up the stairs. Jennifer's head snapped up. Excuse me? I said I'm sure you can manage. You're their mother, after all. She could feel Jennifer's stunned gaze following her, but she didn't turn around. In her room, she opened her laptop and began researching apartment complexes in the area. Not because she planned to move immediately, but because she wanted options. Around 10 a.m., she heard the doorbell. Through her window, she saw the grocery delivery truck, the weekly order she always placed and paid for. She listened as Jennifer answered the door, heard the confusion in her voice. There must be some mistake. We didn't order anything. Says here Margaret Thompson. This address. Prepaid. Oh, well, I guess bring it in. Margaret smiled grimly. This would be the last delivery she'd pay for. Let Jennifer figure out how to feed a family of 4 on her own budget. She spent the day in her suite, declining to come down for lunch, ignoring Jennifer's attempts to conduct business as usual. When Emma and Ryan came home from school, she helped them with homework in her sitting room rather than at the kitchen table. Why aren't we doing homework downstairs? Ryan asked, spreading his math worksheets on her coffee table. I thought it would be nice to change things up, Margaret said. Besides, it's quieter here. At 6 p.m., David came home. She heard his voice downstairs, the low murmur of his conversation with Jennifer, then his footsteps on the stairs. Mom? He knocked gently. Can I come in? Of course. David entered, still in his suit from the architectural firm, looking tired and worried. At 34, he was successful, handsome, and kind, everything a mother could want in a son. But Margaret could see the stress lines around his eyes, the weight he carried trying to keep everyone happy. Jennifer told me what happened yesterday, he began, sitting across from her. Mom, I'm so sorry. She didn't mean… Yes, she did. Margaret's voice was calm but firm. David, I need you to listen without interrupting. Can you do that? He nodded, concern etching deeper into his features. Your wife told me I'm nobody in this house, that I'm trying to buy relevance with money, that everyone pities me, including you. Mom, that's not… She held up a hand. You promised to listen. For 3 years, I've contributed financially to this household. I've paid half of everything, sometimes more. I've respected Jennifer's role as wife and mother, even when she's been hostile. I've bitten my tongue when she's criticized how I load the dishwasher or suggested I'm interfering with the children. David's face flushed. He knew about the tension, but had always hoped it would resolve itself. But yesterday was different, Margaret continued. Yesterday, she made it clear that my presence here is unwanted, that my contributions mean nothing, that I am nothing. So I've made a decision. Mom, please, let's not be hasty. I'm staying in the house for now. This is still my home, as you've always insisted, but I will no longer be contributing financially to the household. The automatic payments will stop at the end of this month. David's eyes widened. Mom, we can't… the budget is your and Jennifer's responsibility. I'm nobody here, remember? Nobody doesn't pay bills. Mom, you're not nobody. You're everything to me, to the kids. I know that, sweetheart, but Jennifer needs to understand what she's taken for granted. Margaret reached over and squeezed his hand. This isn't about punishing you. This is about self-respect. The mortgage payment alone is $5,600. We've been managing because you pay half, then you'll need to adjust your budget. Perhaps Jennifer's income can cover more than designer clothes and spa treatments. David winced. It was the first time Margaret had ever criticized Jennifer's spending to him. What about the kids' activities? Emma's dance? Ryan's soccer? I'll continue to pay for those directly. I won't punish my grandchildren. But the household bills? That's over. David sat in silence for a moment, running his hands through his hair, a gesture she recognized from his childhood when he was overwhelmed. Can I ask you something? He finally said. Were you planning to tell us, or were we going to find out when the bills came due? I plan to inform you both this weekend. You're getting advance notice. Mom, Jennifer's going to… Going to what? Yell? Call me names? Treat me like an unwelcome guest? She's already doing that. She's stressed, Mom. Work has been demanding and… David. Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. I love you. You're my son, and nothing will ever change that. But stop making excuses for her. Stress doesn't give anyone the right to be cruel. He looked down at his hands. I know. I wanted this to work. After Dad died, I couldn't stand the thought of you being alone in this house. I wasn't alone. I had memories, friends, a life. You insisted I move in with you. Because I love you. Because the kids adore you. Because you're my mom. And I'll still be all those things. Just not the one paying bills while being told I'm nobody. David stood, looking older than his years. I need to talk to Jennifer. This is going to be difficult. I imagine it will be. He paused at the door. Mom, what you pay each month, it's more than just help. It's been essential. Jennifer doesn't realize, then maybe it's time she learned. After David left, Margaret heard the raised voices from the master bedroom down the hall. Jennifer's shrill tones pierced through the walls, though she couldn't make out the words. She felt bad for David, caught in the middle, but she'd been caught in the middle too, between her love for her family and her self-worth. Her phone buzzed. A text from her friend Carol. Still on for lunch tomorrow? Absolutely, Margaret typed back. I have a lot to tell you. She was about to set her phone down when it rang. David. Mom, can you please come to the master bedroom? Jennifer wants to talk. Margaret sighed. I'll be right there. The master bedroom was tense with emotion. Jennifer sat on the bed, her makeup smeared from crying, while David stood by the window. Margaret remained in the doorway. Margaret, Jennifer began, her voice hoarse. David told me about the bills. And I want to apologize for yesterday. I was out of line. Margaret studied her daughter-in-law. The apology felt forced, insincere, motivated by financial fear rather than genuine remorse. I accept your apology, Margaret said simply. Jennifer's face lit up with relief. So you'll continue? No. The hope drained from Jennifer's features. But you said you accepted. I accept your apology. That doesn't change my decision. Margaret, please. Jennifer's voice cracked. We can't afford the mortgage without your help. The car payments, the utilities. Then perhaps you should have thought of that before calling me nobody. I didn't mean it. I was angry. You meant every word. And if you didn't, that's almost worse. That you would say such cruel things just to hurt me. Jennifer turned to David, desperation in her eyes. David, do something. David looked exhausted. What would you like me to do, Jen? Force my mother to pay our bills after you insulted her? I'm your wife. You're supposed to support me. I do support you, but support doesn't mean enabling cruelty. Jennifer's face crumpled. So what are we supposed to do? We can't afford this house on our salaries alone. Then we'll have to make changes, David said quietly. Maybe sell, downsize? Sell? This is our home. The kids' home. Margaret felt a pang. This was exactly what she hadn't wanted, to force her family from their home. But then she remembered Jennifer's words. You're nobody here. If you'll excuse me, Margaret said, I'm going to read to Emma before bed. She left them to their discussion, knowing this was just the beginning. The first bill would come due in 2 weeks. Then they'd truly understand what her nobody contributions had meant. As she settled into Emma's room with a book, her granddaughter cuddled close. Grandma, why was Mommy crying? Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements. Sweetheart, but it will all work out. You promise? Margaret kissed Emma's forehead. I promise everything will work out exactly as it should. She opened the book and began to read, pushing away the guilt and doubt. She'd spent her life taking care of others. Maybe it was time to take care of herself, even if it meant watching her son's family struggle with the consequences of taking her for granted. Tentar novamente gokaditar. Chapter 3. The Reality Check. 2 weeks had passed since Margaret's announcement, and the atmosphere in the Thompson house had shifted from tense to suffocating. It was November 1st, the day the first bills without Margaret's contribution would arrive. Margaret sat in the breakfast nook, sipping her coffee and reading the Indianapolis Star, when she heard Jennifer's shriek from the home office. David! David! Footsteps thundered up from the basement where David had been working on blueprints. Margaret continued reading, though her eyes weren't focusing on the words. What's wrong? David's voice still calm but edged with exhaustion. The mortgage payment bounced. The bank just sent an alert. Insufficient funds. That's impossible. I transferred $2,800. You transferred $2,800. The payment is $5,600. Silence. Margaret could picture David's face, the realization dawning. I must have gotten used to only transferring our half, he said quietly. Our half? David, we've never paid half. We've always paid the full. Jennifer's voice cut off abruptly. Margaret heard the office door slam shut, muffling the conversation. But Jennifer's volume made certain words clear. Irresponsible. Betrayal. Manipulation. Margaret folded her newspaper and went upstairs. She had a lunch date with Carol and her friend Patricia at the Columbia Club downtown. She dressed carefully, her favorite burgundy dress, the pearl necklace Robert had given her for their 30th anniversary. As she descended the stairs, she found David waiting at the bottom, still in his pajamas despite it being nearly 10 a.m. Mom, we need to talk. I have a lunch engagement, sweetheart. Please, just 5 minutes. She glanced at her watch. 5 minutes. They sat in the living room, the one Jennifer had redecorated last year with money Margaret had contributed for the house improvements. Mom? The mortgage bounced. I see. You don't seem surprised. David, I told you the automatic payments would stop. Did you think I was bluffing? He rubbed his face. I guess I hoped you'd change your mind. Have you ever known me to say something I don't mean? No. He looked at her with those brown eyes that still reminded her of the little boy who used to climb into her lap after nightmares. Mom, we're going to lose the house. No, you're not. You have options. You could take out a home equity loan, refinance, ask Jennifer's parents for help, or Jen's parents? David laughed bitterly. They think we're rich. Jen's been keeping up appearances, posting about our perfect life on social media. She'd die before admitting we need help. Then perhaps it's time for some honesty. Mom, please. If not for me, for Emma and Ryan. Margaret felt the familiar tug at her heart. David, I love my grandchildren more than life itself. But what lesson am I teaching them if I allow myself to be disrespected in my own home? Jen apologized. Because you told her about the money. Not because she felt genuine remorse. David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and winced. The electric company. They're saying we're past due. The bill was due October 28th. I paid through October 1st. Mom, this is getting serious. What if they shut off the power? The kids? Then I suggest you pay the bill. Margaret stood. David, I love you, but you're 34 years old with a successful career. You shouldn't need your mother to pay your bills. We budgeted based on my contributions. I understand, but budgets can be adjusted. She left him sitting there and drove to the Columbia Club, trying to shake off the guilt. The valet took her car, and she found Carol and Patricia already seated in the wood-paneled dining room. Maggie, Carol waved her over. You look wonderful. That color suits you. Thank you. Margaret sat, grateful for the normalcy of lunch with friends. So, Patricia leaned in conspiratorially. Carol tells me you're having some family drama. Margaret sighed. You could say that. Over salmon salads and white wine, she told them everything. Carol, who'd known her since their children were in elementary school together, listened with increasing indignation. She called you nobody? In your own house? Technically. She's right. The deed is in David and Jennifer's names. But you pay half of everything, Patricia exclaimed. Paid. Past tense. Carol raised her glass. Good for you, Maggie. It's about time you stood up to that woman. I feel terrible for David, though. He's caught in the middle. He's a grown man, Patricia said firmly. And he's allowed this situation to continue. How long has Jennifer been treating you this way? Margaret considered. It started small. Comments about how I folded towels, suggestions that I was too involved with the children. But after Robert died, it escalated. She saw you as vulnerable, Carol said. Thought she could push you around. Well, she thought wrong. They were halfway through lunch when Margaret's phone rang. David again. She declined the call, but a text immediately followed. Mom, please come home. Emergency with Emma. Margaret's heart lurched. She called back immediately. What's wrong with Emma? She's fine, Mom, but she's upset. She heard Jen on the phone with her sister, talking about the situation. She's worried we're going to be homeless. Margaret closed her eyes. I'll be home in an hour. Mom? 1 hour, David. She returned to her lunch, but the food had lost its taste. Carol noticed her distraction. The grandchildren? My 8-year-old granddaughter thinks they're going to be homeless because I won't pay their bills anymore. That's manipulation, Patricia said flatly, using the children to guilt you. Maybe, but Emma doesn't deserve to be frightened. She finished lunch and drove home. Finding Emma curled up on the living room sofa with her favorite stuffed elephant, her eyes were red from crying. Grandma! Emma launched herself into Margaret's arms. Oh, sweetheart, what's all this about? Mommy said we might have to move. She said we can't afford to live here anymore and it's all… Emma stopped abruptly, burying her face in Margaret's shoulder. All what, darling? I don't want to say. Mommy will get mad. Margaret stroked her granddaughter's hair. You can tell me anything. She said it's all your fault, that you're being mean and not helping us anymore. Margaret felt a flash of anger at Jennifer for burdening a child with adult problems. Emma, look at me. She tilted the girl's chin up gently. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements about money, but no matter what happens, you will always have a home. Do you understand? But I like this home. My room is here, and my friends are nearby, and the big tree in the backyard. I know, sweetheart, and maybe you'll get to stay here. But if you do have to move, you'll make new memories in a new place. The important thing is that you'll be with your mom and dad and Ryan. And you? Margaret's throat tightened. I'll always be your grandma, no matter where you live. But will you live with us? Before Margaret could answer, Jennifer appeared in the doorway. She looked haggard, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. "Emma, go to your room. I need to talk to Grandma." "But Mom, now." Emma gave Margaret one last hug and trudged upstairs. Jennifer waited until they heard the bedroom door close. "How dare you?" Jennifer's voice was low but venomous. "I beg your pardon? Telling her everything will be fine? Making promises you can't keep? I told her she'd always have a home. That's not a promise, that's a fact." "Really? Because the mortgage company might disagree." Jennifer stepped closer. "We're already getting late notices. Do you have any idea what this is doing to us? To you? Or to your image?" Jennifer's face flushed. "My image? You think this is about image? Isn't it? David mentioned you haven't told your parents about your financial situation. That's none of your business. Neither were my finances, but that didn't stop you from spending them. We had an agreement. We had an arrangement. One where I paid bills while you treated me like an unwelcome guest. That arrangement is over. So, you're going to let your grandchildren suffer to make a point?" Margaret stood, drawing herself to her full height. "My grandchildren are suffering because their parents lived beyond their means, counting on money that wasn't theirs. Don't you dare put this on me. You vindictive old—" "Careful, Jennifer. Remember, I'm still nobody, and nobody doesn't owe you anything." She walked past Jennifer and up to her suite, hands trembling with anger and adrenaline. Behind her, she heard Jennifer storm off, probably to call David at work again. In her room, Margaret sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She'd been researching senior living communities. Not nursing homes, but independent living apartments with amenities. Places where she'd have her own space, her own life, without the daily emotional warfare. The Heritage at Spring Mill looked nice. 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, a community center, organized activities. The website showed smiling seniors playing cards, taking water aerobics classes, enjoying wine tastings. It looked peaceful. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "Grandma, can you help with my history project tonight?" "Of course." "Sweetheart, what time?" "After dinner? It's about the Great Depression." Margaret almost laughed at the irony. "I'll be ready." Another text, this one from David. "Transferred money to cover mortgage. Had to use credit card advance. We need a family meeting this weekend." She didn't respond. What was there to say? He was learning what Jennifer's pride and disrespect had cost them. That evening, she helped Ryan with his project, carefully explaining the economic factors that led to the Depression while avoiding parallels to their current situation. Jennifer stayed in her bedroom, and David worked late, or perhaps just stayed away. As she tucked Ryan in, he asked, "Grandma, are we poor now?" "No, sweetheart. Your parents are just learning to manage their money differently. Mom says you used to help but won't anymore." "That's true." "Why?" Margaret chose her words carefully. "Sometimes, Ryan, when you help people too much, they forget how to help themselves. And sometimes they forget to be grateful. Like when Emma doesn't say thank you? Something like that. I always say thank you, Grandma." "Yes, you do. You're a good boy. Will you still love us if we have to move?" "Oh, Ryan." She hugged him tight. "I will love you forever. No matter where you live or what happens. That's what grandmas do." Later, alone in her room, Margaret looked at the Heritage at Spring Mill website again. Maybe it was time. Not because she was running away, but because she deserved peace. She'd raised her family, buried her husband, and tried to blend into her son's household. But you couldn't blend in where you weren't wanted, and you couldn't buy respect, no matter how many bills you paid. Tomorrow, she'd call for a tour. It was time to stop being nobody in someone else's home and start being somebody in her own.